Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you, as always, for following, for listening, for watching, for subscribing. Appreciate y'all very much. Joined right now here, and we're doing this live, by the way, on the video side. I'm joined by my buddy, recurring guest, Tone Pucks. So 2 weeks ago, or last week, I should say, you showed up like 40 seconds before we were supposed to go on the air. This time you got here like a full minute and a half. So you're getting better. What's going on, man?
Yeah, I was pressed. I had to fly. I had to scurry the kids out of the gym so I could lock it up and get here. And then the mama, she forgot her house key, so I had to hang around the parking lot waiting for her to come from basketball with the kids. I know you're all very interested in this stuff. So I was pressed for time, but I hustled. I hustled. I got here. Did you let any of my people know, like my fan group of 5, that when it's when we live stream, they pay attention?
Yeah, I did actually. I put
it
on
Twitter.
It
out there somewhere.
I put
How
on
about
social
Facebook?
media. I put on Facebook. I put on Facebook. I'm sure there'll be a few here.
Do we have that thing where they can ask us questions still? That's how I usually know.
We can. And also, I actually have some questions that I've collected from Twitter and from YouTube that we're going to read in a little bit. And I'm going to get your response to those. Usually that's something I do on a solo show, but I figured tonight would be a good night that we would answer some Bills related. This is all Bills stuff tonight. Some Bills related questions.
Aren't the Sabres about to play in an hour?
By the time people listen to this on Tuesday.
Well, all right, we don't have to get into what would have been tonight's game, but I can at least, I have Sabre takes.
All right, we'll probably get to those too. So we'll talk about that. I want to also, by the way, congratulations on being right last week too, because I said they wouldn't, and you said they did, that the Bills would sign somebody, an outside free agent addition.
Sign or trade. I needed to qualify that afterwards.
Yeah, sign or trade. You predicted that they would sign somebody for at least $6 million was the number we set last week, right?
Yeah. Bro, that was a gimme. All right. That was a gimme putt. The only people that didn't think or believe that a player like Bean was going to make, had accounted for the fact that he's going to add a $6 million guy, a guy of that caliber. And anyone who wasn't thinking that was going to be the case is looking at it from a glass half empty perspective. They were just too nervous about, the salary cap situation that we were in. They're not done with $6 million. All right. I mean, if you want to do it again, we'll come right back. Okay. There's another $6 million player coming. Okay.
Really?
Or 2-4 or 2 4s. Yeah. Yes, man. They're in good shape, and they got Tre's 10. All right. For the draft picks, which is actually 4 heavier than the draft picks.
Sure.
They're in good shape. And I don't think they've done all of the restructuring that they can.
Are you surprised that they've done what they've done in terms of their own players? And what I mean by that is reworking, especially Dawson Knox's deal.
True.
The bad news is, I suppose, is that you pretty much, if you guaranteed, I think like $4.5 million. You've locked Dawson Knox into next season now, so you're not getting out of it.
No problem.
But they saved a lot of money.
Good football player.
Yeah.
All right. Good football player. Found a way to probably benefit him in the long run. All right. And found a way to benefit themselves as well at a much more amicable cap hit. So the move with Knox was a win. The move with Miller, we talked about that already, whether or not it was, whether they played a certain game with him there.
Right.
That was a win. The extensions were all predictable. We knew Josh's money was being converted. We knew We knew that Dion was probably up for an extension, and that would, reduce the cap hit. That was no surprise to anybody. When that other real good Nickelback got the money, you knew right away that the Bills had the groundwork for the Taron Johnson extension. These have all been extremely predictable moves by the Bills, at least as far as what they've done with their own, who they've kept of their own. I think the only surprise remains the Morse cut. Outside of the Fields with the cuts in the secondary, the only surprise has been the Morse cut, and the additions have been fine. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about the biggest one to date in Curtis Samuel, and the retentions have been fine. This is one of my favorite times of the year because I think Brandon Beane and his department is exceptional. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure that the guy's still there, but let's not forget just how good a guy like Jim Overdorf is to have in the front office, with the cap. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure he's still around.
I don't think he is. Actually,
are you really?
Man.
You don't think
Overdorf's
around?
I think he's been gone for a while. I do agree with you about how much they've done. And, pre-free agency shows, this show, tons of other really good Bills content creators shows, talked about all these, like a list of all the things that the Bills could do to realistically free up cap money. I just didn't really anticipate that they were going to do, you don't believe me, do you? You're looking it up right now?
I'm curious.
Anyway,
but
like the Bills have done like almost all the things. Like I think in my mind, the only two avenues that they haven't explored that were talked about maybe pre-free agency was restructuring Ed Oliver, which still could potentially happen. Not likely, but it could happen. And then something we talked about last week and we've talked about a few times, and that would be restructuring Stephon Diggs' contract, which I still do not think they're going to do because I think they want to have that option to see where they're at with him at the end of next season. By the way, we're like not even 7 minutes into the stream. We already got 500 people watching us live. So that's pretty cool on the video side. I want to talk about, we're going to talk about Curtis Samuel, but
I think Overdorf's still in the organization.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't think he is, though. I'm not sure, but I don't think he is. Anyway, regardless, let me say this real quick. I just want to spend like 5 minutes talking about something that throughout the craziness of the past 2 weeks with the Bills, I kind of feel bad that I just completely glossed over. I know you gave me a funny look when I talked about this during our 30-second pre-show production meeting that lasted literally 30 seconds. But all those cuts that happened before free agency with Morse and Poyer, Tre White, and then other moves, and then they bring in Mitch Trubisky, and then they re-sign Taylor Rapp, just that craziness of that day, and then free agency starting right after. I never really addressed Tre White, and I want to do that for a minute here. And I think maybe the reason why I didn't think much of it at the time was because I knew it was coming. I don't understand how more people didn't see that coming. Like there were some people, and I agree with you, Mitch Morse was the lone surprise, but I think there were a lot of people who were surprised about Tre White getting cut. I was not surprised. I thought the writing was on the wall. The injuries, you got Rasul Douglas, you still got Christian Benford, who's come to his own. I know you're high on him. Kyrie Elam, your third corner, Dane Jackson, was still out there at the time, at least anyway. He went to Carolina. But anyways, I saw it coming. I never even asked you for a take on Tre White, man. Let's just talk. Let's play Homage. Do you call it Homage or Homage? Is you're an Homage guy?
I might even make the H.
Yeah.
It's either I think I say Homage. I've never even heard Homage.
Really?
I've never heard.
Oh, I hear that a lot. Anyway, dude, listen, man. He spent 7 years with the Bills, man. A two-time All-Pro player, not Pro Bowl player, but All-Pro player, 2019 and 2020. AP Defensive Rookie of the Year. What are you laughing at already?
My cousin just texted me. Can you hold that phone any closer to your face? And it's how I have to read, bro, because I'm in between classes right now, and I can't read anything on my phone unless I'm like this.
Right up to your face.
And it was a great observation.
You're not helping me pay homage to Tre White right now. I can tell you that.
I'm sorry for your moment of homage here.
But seriously,
I'm sorry
man,
for the missed moment of homage.
The guy spent 7 years here, man. All right, and again, a 2-time All-Pro player, and 18 picks he had because they didn't throw at him much, but just a really good player on the field and an even better dude off the field, man. Fun guy. The Tre White Goalie Academy is still one of my favorite things, Buffalo sports things here in recent years. I could go on and on about him. I'm not, but I do want to ask you, like, for your thoughts on Tre White. I kind of feel like his leaving went a little bit under the radar. Maybe because Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, well, Hyde's not officially gone, Poyer is, but maybe because of those guys and Mitch Morse, the kind of a bombshell sort of getting cut. I just feel like Tre White went a little bit under the radar. So I don't know. What were your thoughts on him, man? As a player, as a person off the field, I just one of my favorites for sure.
Tre was a lot of fun to have, as part of this run right from the jump, no doubt about it. And I think Tre being, the draft pick the year that we traded back, to stack for
Mahomes.
for Allen the next year.
Oh, yeah.
You blow that pick, it's even worse. The fact that you got someone like him late in the first round was a huge first win, early win for McDermott's tenure. I don't know who made the pick. I'm still interested in that. Do you ever wonder?
Whaley or McDermott?
You ever wonder if McDermott pushed it or if Whaley pushed it? That one I find an interesting topic, but he was a lot of fun to have here, and like if we win a bowl in the Allen era and look back and say, man, I wish we could have got it during this guy's tenure here, I think Tre will be right at the top of that list, right?
Okay.
Those guys, we lost 4 guys this season that if we were to go win a Super Bowl next year or the year after or something like that, you're going to look back and say, man, I wish this could have been with that group.
Yeah, they deserve a piece. They deserve a little piece. Sure. Is he the best cornerback in Buffalo Bills history? I know I put him down the spot. I
think that's fair.
I mean,
what else? I don't go back. I'll get confused with whether or not guys made, like Butch Bird. I don't know. Was he a safety or a corner? I'm not good with the real old timers, but from the point that I can remember,
modern era.
Even maybe a little before the modern era, like I would put these guys in the conversation with Tre White, but I'm going from about the Mario Clark, Charles Rome's days on.
Nate Odoms.
Yeah, sure. Odoms belongs in that. He was an excellent corner on the 4 Super Bowl teams. So Odoms belongs in that conversation, but I don't think Odoms had the skill sets that right. Tre had. Here's the thing with Tre leaving that made it kind of that why it flew under the radar for me a little bit. Number one, I don't get real hung up on, I don't get real invested in players as people. All right. Cause you could just as easily fall into a trap where you end up rooting for someone that you find out is like Tyreek Hill. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just not that interesting to me. Would I rather have, the athletes that I root for be good guys? Absolutely. And Tre was one of the best. But man, we just did not see him play a lot of football the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. We just didn't see him play a lot of football the last 2 years. And for me, it's about the field first and then kind of the feels second. All right.
Sure,
what I mean? And the fact that we just didn't see a lot of Tre the last couple of years, I came to I made peace with that, right? I made peace with Tre White not contributing to this football team.
Sure.
So to move forward without him as a contributor isn't that big of a shock to the system.
That's fair. I get sad a little bit. And I mean, I know what you're saying too about not getting attached to the players, but dude, his first 4 years in the league, I mean, again, he was the runner-up for AP Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Very good.
He was a 2-time All-Pro, not Pro Bowler. He was a 2-time All-Pro in his first 4 years. And then he signed a 4-year extension. And I remember a lot of talk that he might leave at that time. And it kind of reminded me of Eric Moulds. You remember when Eric Moulds was a free agent? A lot of people thought he was going to leave. And then he re-signed with the Bills, and it was a big deal. I kind of felt that way about Tre. And then Tre was great in 2021 until Thanksgiving when he tore the ACL. And the other thing is, I thought Tre, he was terrible when he came back in 2022. I mean, he was a straight up liability because he wasn't nowhere near 100%, but he was this summer. I remember going to training camp, and I was probably focused on 2 or 3 things. How Stephon Diggs looked, and did he seem like he was in a good mood, happy to be there? I fell for all the bullshit last offseason, so I was kind of locked on him. I was locked on Kyrie Elam. I want to know how Kyrie Elam looked every day, so I would pay a lot of attention to him, and I paid a lot of attention to Tre White, and he looked so good. And he was good for the first month of this season before the Achilles. I think he might have had an interception in the Miami game, too, before he got hurt on that play. But I don't know. I guess maybe that's one of the things that makes me like him so much is his emotion. Like crying on the field, that was sad.
Well, yeah, man, it sucked.
And with DeMar Hamlin, man, I'll never forget the emotion of Tre White and then Mitch Morse, 2 guys who are no longer here. But I don't know. Like I said, it's easy to move on from him as the player because arguably he's not even one of the best 2 corners on this football team. Even if he was making minimum salary right now, forget about cutting him to save money. I don't know that he's one of the best 2 corners as things stand right now on this team when you got Rasul Douglas, and I think Christian Benford right now at least is a better corner anyway. So the football aspect is easy to move on from. I don't know. Like I said, I just kind of felt I owed it to myself anyway to just kind of acknowledge him because he was barely a blip on the radar with this show since he got cut. So just wanted to shout him out. Real quick before we get into other stuff too. Teron Johnson, you talked about it a little bit earlier, but I'm assuming that's an extension that you like. 3 years, $31 million. He's now the highest paid nickel in the NFL. I'm sure they did it in part to lower his cap number for this year, but also I think it's an extension that he's earned. I mean, he was literally an all-pro player last year, so it's a good move.
I like the move, and I like the player. I don't know that I like him as much as everybody else. Like some people will talk about him as if, his game is near flawless. Mm-hmm. And I feel like good coordinators, good offensive coordinators aren't afraid to get him in space. I think he can be beat in coverage sometimes.
He had a rough stretch this season.
And that always makes me nervous because that's a corner's main job. Look, I mean, especially around the line of scrimmage, in the box, supporting the run, blowing up screens, switching on like mesh plays where, the pick plays and stuff like that. He's terrific. But man, when he's got to get about 10 yards downfield in coverage, I get a little nervous. I think he makes me a little more nervous than he makes others. But that's not enough for me to say, whoa, what kind of extension is this?
Right.
He is definitely in the conversation for one of the best nickelbacks in football. And he helps transition a new secondary, a secondary changeover because
he's that veteran voice now in that secondary.
You don't think about him, you don't think about it. A secondary as a 5-person unit,
right?
You know what I mean? It's always a 4-person unit, but when you add Johnson to the mix of a 5-person unit, well, then your unit gets a hell of a lot better, and you can integrate new players, as it looks like the Bills, will need to do at least one, right? At least one. If you think Rapp's a day one starter,
he is. I think he is.
You got at least one still to go.
Sure. Look, Teron, to your point, I mean, it's fair
it's not Taron.
It's Taron.
Taron
Johnson. Yeah. To your point, I think that's fair.
Homage.
The praise is deserved, but he is not without flaw. I mean, he had a rough stretch last year for a while. He got away with a pass interference that should have lost in the game against the Giants. He got beat the next week I think it was the next week. He got beat for the game-winning touchdown in New England on that tight end slant by Gesicki. He had a pretty rough game against Denver. So he had a rough stretch. But that said, yeah, man, he's one of, without question, the best nickels in the NFL. I like the extension. And like I said, I think he becomes the leader now of that secondary because you don't got the veteran voice of Poyer or Hyde anymore in that locker room, or Tre White for that matter. He's the guy now who's been there the longest tenured. So I think not only is he going to be counted on to continue playing at a high level, but I think that at least to some extent, Sean McDermott's counted on him to be a voice, to be a leader on this football team too now.
Yeah, definitely a voice. I don't know how much a nickelback can do in terms of directing the rest of the secondary. I don't know how much you can lead in the X's and O's on the field from his spot. But yeah, definitely a senior voice in the DB's room. But I wouldn't call that the DB room inexperienced, even with the loss of their two most experienced dudes.
Sure.
Roswell Douglas is a veteran in this league.
Oh yeah.
Christian Benford definitely still young. Rapp has been around. They're not
won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, they're not a young secondary. Sure. They just again they're gonna be they're going to have a different look this year for sure.
Brandon Beane deserves a lot of credit for that pick. 2018 fourth rounder with Johnson. I went through every Bills draft in the history of the franchise earlier today. He's the third best fourth round pick in the entire history of this franchise, dating all the way back to the early 60s. You got Andre Reed. He'll always probably be the best fourth round pick ever in 85. The only other person I found that I'm like, all right, I got to put him above Teron Johnson, as you mentioned him earlier, Butch Bird, 1971. And I didn't want to do that because I don't remember him playing. But dude had 40 interceptions. Dude had 40 picks for the Bills.
Yeah, Bird was on the wall, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was.
You hear the rumblings that, they're not going to have the wall at the new stadium?
I heard something about it. That would be dumb.
Got to be they have to have some sort of tribute to the guys that were on the wall when that stadium comes down and the other one goes up.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's just, come on.
By the way, we're live here on the video side anyway. We are live. Over 1,000 people watching this too right now live with us.
What are you people doing? They're staying up for the Sabre game is what they're doing.
Sabres after dark coming up in a
staying up.
All right, so last week, like you said, you predicted a $6 million signing, got that, and a little bit more actually with Curtis Samuel. I've already talked about it. I like the signing. I've heard good things. I've listened to other people's takes on Curtis Samuel and how he's going to fit in. My lone question remains is it going to negatively impact the usage and the playing time, the snaps for Khalil Shakir, a guy that I thought was becoming a breakout star, quite frankly, on the Buffalo Bills near the end of the season. People that I talk to or listen to and watch don't really seem to think that's going to have a negative impact on him. What were your thoughts on the signing? Let's go there.
Loved it and have no concerns whatsoever about Brady's ability to use both of them at the same time. I don't think he's the least bit concerned about who's going to be his boundary receiver.
Is that something fans talk about more than he does? Meaning, we're fixated on you got to have a big 6'4", 215-pound boundary.
Or we're fixated on where guys line up, and we pigeonhole them there, thinking that because they lined up there, that is where they are most effective. All right. I mean, I feel like, can't we look at it and say, well, Khalil Shakir lined up there because Gabe Davis was a boundary receiver and Stephon Diggs was a boundary receiver. Shakir became a clear number 2 last year down the stretch when Gabe got injured, and he's only now just coming into his own. I mean, are you telling me that he can't go from, 60% slot snaps to 60% boundary snaps without without worrying a whole hell of a lot about it. I mean, I think we're overdoing it a little bit, and I also think that if you take the Mac Hollins signing and kind of group it with the Samuel signing, I know we kind of got hung up on he's the Trent Sherfield replacement.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm just doing the same thing I did with Sherfield, overvaluing him when he first got here because I wanted him to be good. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm just doing the same thing with Mac Hollins. But I feel like Hollins is better. I feel like he's the better player. And I feel like when the Bills
2 years ago,
I feel like when the Bills need, if they have to go to a 3-person set and Shakir or Samuel is taking the play off or whatever, I think you can put Hollins on the outside, Diggs on the outside, and one of Shakir or Samuel in the middle. I think Hollins will.
I agree.
Will be the 4. I think Hollins will be the 4. I don't think Shorter's ready to go and grab it from him yet. I think Hollins is the 4, and we're not even talking about the rookie that they're gonna sign, man. People.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
Josh might have his best weapons of his career at the start of this year.
Ooh, well, that would be saying a lot because in 2020 he had
Sanders. The year with Sanders,
Pete Beasley is still a very good John Brown back in 2020.
Yeah.
I agree with you about Mac Hollins, by the way. I think that is a nice, sneaky signing. I reached out to my boy, man, Damone Harris, who plays for the Falcons. He played with him all last year. And I asked him.
I should have pieced that together when you.
Yeah, well, I can say it now because he said positive things. If he would have said, listen, Damone's very honest with me, man. I talk to him frequently. And if he would have said negative stuff about him, I just wouldn't have used his name and I wouldn't have said it. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I know.
And he's very honest with me. And he said the dude is a great player.
I believe it.
A great dude. And that the biggest problem with him in Atlanta is he just didn't have the opportunities last year. They were a disaster at quarterback.
Yeah.
They had a bunch of receivers. He just never got the opportunity. 2 years ago in Vegas, he was pretty good. But yeah, man, I'm not going to, he's not the number 2 receiver, but he could be a really solid 4. Before we take a break, because then I do have some questions, that all Bills related from fans that I want to get to. But you just talked about this possibility. All right, so you're not worried about Samuel. You're not worried about Khalil Shakir. Still not that worried about Diggs and their roles with this team. But what happens?
Hold on. I'm going to come back in here after taking off my jacket. I'm not going to call it a concern, okay? But one of the things that can offset these additions is if Stephon Diggs is falling off a cliff. That's a big if.
Sure.
It's a big if. Okay. But the one thing I'm not assuming when it comes to the caliber of this group is that Diggs is still the Diggs of 2 years ago.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't want to call Stephon Diggs my biggest concern, as if to say like that he's not still wide receiver 1 by a lot. But Diggs, well, I'll draw a comparison here. I'll compare him to Tate Thompson if I happen to get around to that take. Okay. I'm just not sure, they're playing at wide receiver or center 1 levels. And at least in the case of Diggs, it would be understandable because, he's on the other side of 30, and it's a point where you could start to see some regression. I ain't a Diggs hater by any stretch of the imagination.
In fact, congratulations, because you might be the first person that I've heard when they express any concern with Stephon Diggs. It's about what he's doing on the field and what happened at the end of last year, as opposed to cryptic tweets
I pay no
and
attention.
assumptions.
Zero
to stuff. You pay zero attention to that?
Zero.
Doesn't bother you at all?
None.
I ain't going nowhere. He just got money guaranteed.
Here's the thing.
Not this year.
Hold on. I won't just put that out there like I know, all right, that it's impossible for some sort of structuring of a trade that doesn't kill the Bills. All right. I'm not going to sit there and say that I'm 100% sure that it can't happen financially. There are, I know we got guys that are really, really smart. All right. With the cap. Thompson, I mean, for a content guy, excellent with it. And a lot of guys are very smart with the cap. But they ain't as smart as the front office of the teams. And I'm just not ruling out that there isn't a way to still
trade him after June 1st.
Move on from Diggs. I think it's a very low percentage play, but I'm not just, digging in on he ain't going anywhere.
Let me ask you one more question here related to Stephon and just the wide receiver group as a whole. Let's just say for fun, the Bills, forget about even 28. Let's say they move up and they get up to 22, 23 in the draft, and they take Brian Thomas Jr., and a big-time receiver. Does that put – it's got to be somebody. So if you got Diggs, you got Thomas, who, again, you moved up for in the first round. You got Kincaid already, too, obviously. You got Samuel. You got Shakir. Somebody's losing out. Does that maybe get the ball – if they draft a receiver in the first round, especially if they were to move up, does that get you thinking at least a little bit more about Diggs maybe? What might happen to him potentially over the summer? Or is that, we're going to develop this guy a little bit slowly. We got the luxury of doing that because we got a bunch of good receivers now. And then that's our guy in 2024. And they likely move on from Stephon at that point.
If they go and get, especially if it's a move up and they get a polished guy, then yes, I think you may stop for a minute and look at it and say, oh, is it possible? All right. That there could be some movement on Diggs. I don't think that'll be the case. Part of me thinks that the Samuel signing is an indication that, not necessarily that they're going to wait until day 2, but I think we're getting I think their eyes are on an unpolished receiver who's going to be given time to grow into the into the role. I don't think the Thomas trade ups, for the polished guy is necessarily what's going down. But if it does go down, does it move the meter on potential Steph talk a little bit? Sure. But I still see, even in a case where they move up, I'm still, it's still far greater than 50-50 that Steph stays. And you've just got an embarrassment of wide receiver riches as far as I'm concerned, man. Let's go. I mean, it's about to become a strength. Everyone who's on the wide receiver train, all right, everyone who talks about the wide receiver train, it's happening. All right. They're winning. They're getting through to Brandon Beane. You are going to have your wide receiver train, bro. I mean, you're about to roll out, Diggs, a day 1 draft pick, Curtis Samuel, and Khalil Shakir. I mean, come on. As long as Diggs hasn't fallen off too much, I'll put that 1 through 4 up against anybody. I think how many times have we seen quarterbacks not really blossom into ridiculous stat patterns until the second half of their career? Once the organization has had them for a little bit, they build around them. They make sure that no matter what, that dog's got to eat. All right. I think that's happening right in front of our eyes with the Bills. And we're not even talking about the fact that they might be sitting there with who's about to break into one of the 5 best tight ends in football. Josh Allen's about to throw for 5,000 yards. Clip it.
All right, we are back here live again on the video side. Over 1,200 people now joined up in the stream. I think it's a Talking Buffalo live stream record here, Tone Pucks.
But ain't nobody going to like the post tomorrow on Twitter. That's all. I sit there all day just looking to see if 1 or 2 people will like when Pat fucking puts the
I
thing up
do it
in the
every
morning.
day. Yeah,
Nobody likes
There's
it.
no interaction, but views is all that matters, my guy. Trust me when I tell you. Anyway,
They're padded.
I got a handful of questions before we get out of here. I got a handful of questions.
Are we close to getting out of here?
Submitted from fans, huh?
Are we close to getting out of here?
We're past the halfway point.
All right,
man. So let's see.
Are you gonna do I brought my laptop. Are you gonna hook that up so I can do it?
Oh, you did bring your laptop.
I did.
Real quick here.
We can watch some of the Sabres, and you can set that up for me.
All right. So
and then I don't have to come out here anymore.
Real quick here. Tone Bucks lives in Kenmore. My studio is here in West Seneca. And Tone has a laptop. He has a USB mic, and he has a what's the other thing? A webcam now. And I want him to hook it up so that sometimes instead of having to come here and make a physical trip, although I like having you in the studio, but sometimes it might just be easier for you to be able to record this shit from your man cave, your basement. And you are not technically savvy enough to plug into a USB microphone and a USB webcam and be able to accept an invitation to join StreamYard.
I probably am. If you want to know the guys on the truth, I probably am savvy enough. I'm just too lazy. All right. My basement's in shambles right now as I'm going through a toy purge. So just a lot going on there. You know what I would like to do this year though, is I'd like you to maybe mic me up for one of my high school baseball games, like as a coach.
Because you're gonna try to break a big losing streak. You want?
Yeah, all right. We're gonna be fine this year. We're gonna be a good squad this year. But yeah, no, I want to be mic'd up on a live on a live episode.
All right,
and make that happen.
All right, let me get to some fan submitted questions here. At Tony Buffalo 83 says, what other players are on your radar if you think the Bills had a small chance to make a deal for them? Is there anybody specific out there right now that's available that you look at this roster? We don't know exactly what the cap situation is, but it was relatively decent before the Johnson extension. I'm sure they're going to gain some room for that. Is there anybody out there that you would really like to sign right now? If maybe not a player, at least a position that you definitely want to see filled.
Well, I think I'm just like everybody else that's still, would like to see a more veteran presence at safety before we head into the draft, so that we're not, stuck having to grab and say, you just don't want to be in that position. I don't think they're ready to give it to Cam Lewis. I'm going to say this, and this is a reach, but if I end up hitting on it, well, maybe I'll look good. I'm not out on what's Simmons' first name? Justin Simmons. Yeah. I'm not out on Simmons. Okay. And I'll tell you what I think we might be seeing. It's crazy for him to have not found a home yet. It's crazy. It wouldn't shock me if him and the Bills have been trying to make the match almost from the jump, and it's just money. They know they want each other, and they're in a little bit of a standoff or a staring contest right now. And the Bills have to be able to say that we're prepared to move on. All right. If we can't have our terms met, and then they take a look at another veteran safety.
Well, they brought one in on Monday.
That's what I mean. All right. I don't believe that everything is a smokescreen in the off season. Far from it, actually. But I do believe that there are very calculated smoke screens. I think sometimes the draft visits can be a smoke screen. Sure. Like they can go heavy on a position, or they cannot have somebody come in, but end up, drafting that person. Like they don't want to be attached to that. I feel like Kincaid might have been that. I could be wrong though. Somebody in the last few years, I think, wasn't a visit necessarily, like an official one. So I'm just spitballing here, just trying to put a positive, a potentially exciting spin on it, not to dog the prospect of the player that they met with today or were rumored to be having in today. I don't know that anything was confirmed.
Well, Jordan Schultz reported. He's a credible dude, so I completely believe it. Julian Blackman's the safety, by the way. Good young safety too. Had 4 picks last year with with Indy.
I'm just not ruling out the fact that it's all part of a bigger Justin Simmons negotiation. I'm on record as saying I think we've got another $6 million plus swing coming. And safety is certainly a spot where it's possible.
He'd be perfect, man. I'll tell you, besides
Brandon Bean, it's just Bean. Come on, man.
Do you know what? There's another factor about Simmons, too.
That shit.
He's a good player. He's literally an all-pro safety. Here's the other thing, too. He's played well against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's the guy you got to beat, right? If you're the Buffalo Bills, he's intercepted Patrick Mahomes more than anyone else has. So, I mean, he's a dynamic football player, and he's just a great fit for this team. It feels like this is what that team needs. It's just obviously going to come down to money. I can guarantee you, I got no inside knowledge of this, but he's got to have offers out there. He's had to have talked to teams, and he's probably weighing opportunities right now, or maybe he's just playing the waiting game, or I don't know what it is. But anyway, I agree with you 100%. That would be my guy as well. At RBU2136, and this is him, not me. So I'm actually going to say this how he spelled it. Christ Samuel is a super fast Edelman. Great hands, great slot receiver, fast, smart, and a good guy in crowds on the weekends. What is that? What do you think that last line even means? Good guy in crowds on the weekends? Is he talking about the club, or is he talking about the football field? I'm not really sure what he was getting at there with that one.
Well, I think you should have done some prep. Maybe Googled it to see if he was, if there's a story
about him being.
You want to start there,
cool with crowds at the club,
or maybe RBU has just run into him and
enjoyed his experience with him
and partied on. I think I think you're doing the guy a little dirty. I think it's just a typo. Christ Samuel.
Curtis is. I mean, that's not even close. Christ Samuel.
Curtis. Yeah.
That's not even close. Let me add.
Maybe he thought it was Chris, and then he added a T.
I don't know. That was a little bit. But
hold on. The first part. Let's not gloss over the first part.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm ready to say super fast Edelman. I mean, Edelman. He was a damn good slot receiver, man. Edelman was kind of a jerk off, but Curtis Samuel's a good football player, man. Curtis Samuel's a great fit. He's Naheem Hines in one regard, and
sure, I
don't know, McKenzie, whoever. I don't know that we've had a guy that dynamic.
That's as fast as he is
during Allen's tenure. No. I mean, he's very good, man. He's
good slot guys. I mean, Shakir's coming on. Cole Beasley was at all pro level slot for at least 2 of those years, but not the speed.
They're the best
that Curtis Samuel has.
Definitely.
A lot of people say,
best weapons.
A lot of people will say, well, why isn't Samuel had a better career? Well, because he's played with mostly pretty shitty ass scrub quarterbacks. That may be why.
Terrible.
All right, let's stick with him too. Got another one here. At Peter Wilson 4865 says he runs like half his pass routes, or he's run like half his pass routes on the boundary. He's a positionalist guy, and he played a lot more out there under Brady in Carolina. Great signing. I think they will still draft a boundary guy with their first pick too, and would applaud it. Get Mitchell, Franklin, Worthy, McConkey, or others in that tier. That's a nasty wide receiver corps.
My man's just
all of a sudden
right there with me.
He says what you said. I want to point out something. I want to share something that Joe Marino said on his show.
I don't know who any of those guys are, by the way. Like I recognize a name or two. I spend zero time investing in 80 who I hope the receiver is. I just don't care. I have no preference.
Appreciate you admitting
I leave it to the Bills.
Appreciate you being honest. A.D. Mitchell is a big dude. Franklin's a burner. Worthy is that small dude who set the record at the combine, but he's like really small.
Saw that.
And McConkey, who, by the way, he's not related to Phil McConkey. I didn't know if he was or not. I had to look that up when I first heard of him. But anyway, he's kind of like almost like a Samuel in a way, an inside-outside positionalist type of receiver.
McConkey's got more size, though, yes?
A little bit, yes. So
nice first name too, Ladd.
Yeah, I like Ladd. I do like
fucking
Ladd.
Irish with a name like Ladd.
Joe Marino on Locked On Bills talked about Samuel and Shakir, and Josh Allen, and he pointed out something that I thought was really smart. He has his most success with really good receivers that could separate off the line of scrimmage. He hasn't really done well with the big boundary guys like Kelvin Benjamin and Gabe Davis and Andre Roberts when they were in Buffalo. Like Josh Allen works well with explosive, quick guys who can get open quick and separate off the line of scrimmage. So they might not even draft a 6'3", 6'4" big guy. 5'1".
5,000 yards.
You're really convinced of that, aren't you? Ryan Gallivan is commenting our guy a lot on the podcast right now.
He's so mad if you don't read one of his comments. I'm going to have to hear about it.
I've already ignored the last few, and I'm sure he's definitely not going to be happy about
swearing
that.
Yet? Is he mad at us yet?
Let's.
Has he had any good takes?
He's had a couple. He's either agreed or disagreed with our takes.
These questions that are being read right now were predetermined. Pat already had them written out. He hasn't taken any from the actual show itself.
No. Well, there hasn't really been questions. There's just been comments. They're not questions.
Comments.
But all right, here's what I want to read. It's from Mike Mansell. He says Ed Oliver falls asleep every year after week 16, so we clearly need help on the line. Tell you what. You want to talk about where the Bills need help? I mean, we're talking safety, and it's very valid. You can make a fair point that the depth on the defensive line right now is the Bills' biggest need. It is definitely a bigger need than wide receiver right now, at least anyway, especially at that defensive tackle position. They got Ed Oliver, 32-year-old Daquan Jones coming off a torn pec, and they literally don't have another defensive tackle even under contract right now. Joe from Queens is going to hate this shit. But it is their biggest need right now.
Well, I think Eli Anaku might still be under contract. I think there's.
I don't know. Maybe
I think there's another guy
he'll get cut
contract.
17 times. He's on and off.
It might be his year.
17 times.
It might look. It might. And I don't say this entirely jokingly. It might be the year.
I don't think he's with the Bills.
It might be the year. There's a guy. There's one of those practice squad guys. I saw it on Sal's list the other day. I like Sal's Excel spreadsheet where he does the roster.
Yeah, pretty good.
It's pretty good stuff because he's able to put it right on a tweet. If you can put something right on a tweet, all right. My short attention span is going to jump all over it. Here's the thing though, whether Anaku is part of it or not. All right, it's just not going to take a lot. It's just not a heavy lift. Okay, finding yourself a safety that you can pair with Taylor Rapp to get somewhat the level that you've come to expect with Hyde and Poyer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a heavy lift. That's going to take some doing. I don't believe that finding your third and fourth defensive tackle and maybe your fourth defensive end is that heavy of a lift. I think it's going to happen, and I'm just not worried. I'm just not worried. They know that they like to rotate. They had in Sebastian Day, from the Giants or whatever his name is the other
Sebastian Joseph Day.
All right. He
visited Tennessee Monday.
They are going to sign a veteran defensive tackle, and they are going to sign a veteran defensive end, and they are going to draft a defensive tackle, and they are going to draft a defensive end, and they're going to be every bit as good as your Jordan Phillips's.
That's a low bar.
I understand that, but even still, I get that we rotate, but our starters are set. You have to. There needs to at least be some accounting for the fact that the starters are set.
There is.
Okay. I don't need a stud in my rotation. I just need a quality 3. Go out and find better, Tim Settle,
dude,
Phillips. I know they
were terrible.
They did, but those are 3 through 5. So in the NFL,
know, but the drop off.
Those are 3 through 5s in the NFL. That's what you get.
Yeah,
it's what you get.
I'm going to say this.
But let me just to Mike's point. I'm not more desperate to find it because I think Oliver disappears. I don't have a problem with what he's saying, but I don't feel extra urgency at tackle because I think Oliver is going to disappear in the playoffs. I feel like
he's done it twice.
I get it.
In elimination games. He has been absolutely irrelevant and dead silent in their last 2 playoff elimination losses. Maybe that doesn't by itself dial up the urgency for you, but the drop off, even Silent Ed and Broken Peck Daquan, when they're off the field, their replacements were scrub level. I might even say replacement level. They were scrub level replacements. I'm sorry, but you got nothing from Tim Settle last year.
We'll fill that hole.
Jordan Phillips makes a play, and then he makes 3 penalties to make up for it. Plus, I think he's retiring anyway.
We'll fill that hole. It's just not a gaping hole.
Let me say this. If you play 35 to 40% of the snaps in a Sean McDermott defense, because that's what the backups usually do, you're like, well, it's only 35. Joe from Queens says this all the time. We play 30, 35 snaps. AJ Epinesa, only 35% of the snaps. Every single snap that a defenseman, lineman, that they line up for, it matters on that play. Every snap where you could be a receiver and you get maybe 10 targets a game if you're good, and maybe there's 5 or 6 where you're like the secondary guy per game. You're involved in maybe 15 plays a game.
All right, look, bro, I'm not saying that the Bills are going to roll me out there for 35% of the snaps at defensive tackle. All I'm telling you is, all right, there are probably a list of 10 guys hanging in Brandon Beane's office right now that he knows he can get a quality 35% of the snaps from. They're out there. They can be had. They will sign one, probably that you heard of. You're probably going to get an end and a tackle that you heard of, all right, before free agency
Ryan
is up.
Gallivan drafting defensive lineman in the first round guaranteed. There you go. It's already a done deal now.
It's done. All right, at least you got him out there.
All right, so now I got another one.
If he hits on it, you got to give him his credit.
This is from at Maz Vids. He's a regular watcher, listener of this show. He's got some really good questions and takes. I have him on almost every time I do one of these. I get something from him. Kind of on the same path, though. He says the Bills need to address the defensive line position in the draft, or the offense will be required to score a lot more points to win games. There's no way around it. I know everyone loves the high-flying offense of years past. It's just not where the game is today. Trench warfare is where the game is trending. You'll see the spread come back in a few years once defenses adjust to get bigger, slower. Everything goes, it comes back again. The recipe for success is staying ahead of the trend. Do you buy the trend being right now that teams are winning in the trenches? I think the Kansas City Chiefs are a really good example. If you're going to back that take, I would actually, even though they got Mahomes and Travis Kelce, their lines on the offensive and defensive lines, huge. A big reason why they won the Super Bowl.
I need more.
That's fair.
I need more years to see a trend that way.
Okay.
I don't mind the first part. All right. I do think you'll see a defensive lineman before the end of day 2. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to see at least one defensive lineman before the end of day 2. By the way, Ryan Galvin, I think that's enough. Our boy, I don't think he was. We were kind of making light of it. He could very well be right. The Bills could draft an edge rusher in the first round. There's a few out there.
I struggle.
Come back or receiver in round 2.
Struggle with the idea of that. With the run on twos that they spent. I think I know Brandon Beane's not going to not do something because of a bad look.
Mm-hmm.
But if he misses on another edge guy, okay, after Rousseau, Epinesa, and Basham, I feel like it's going to kind of be like, man, the re-signing of Epinesa, I think, at least gives the Bills the option of going as deep as the 3rd round.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah. I think AJ Epinesa, by the way, for what it's worth, I still think he's a player that could be ascending. He's young, and he was good last year before he messed up his ribs in that Chiefs game. He had 6.5 sacks in his first 12 games. He was playing well. Then he got hurt, and he wasn't the same player when he came back, just like Daquan Jones was last year as well. I feel like what could work or what could play out is the Bills sign a safety in free agency, whether it's Blackman. Ultimately, Simmons would be great, but there's a handful of them. Quadre Diggs is another guy I'd love to see the Bills sign. You sign your safety, and then receiver, defensive tackle, defensive end. 2 of your first 3 picks are going to be defensive linemen. That's how I feel things are going to play out, with a receiver sandwiched in between them. However, I don't know what order, but I could kind of feel like that's going to play out. A couple more I wanted to get to here. The beauty, this is from, actually, I don't even have the name here, but the beauty in bringing back Ty Johnson is that he doesn't prohibit you from pursuing whatever other option you want at running back 3. You could draft a highly regarded rookie with a mid-round pick or a late flyer on a running back, maybe an injury-prone flyer on a guy like J.K. Dobbins or veteran like Ezekiel Elliott. Quickly here, your thoughts on bringing back Ty Johnson? I've said it. I loved it. One of my favorite re-signings, actually. And do you think that you laugh? He laughs, folks, because he says that all along. He says that I always like every re-signing. I know in part that's why you're laughing, but I really legitimately like this.
I wanted him back too. I'm surprised it wasn't that they even let him hit free agency.
Sure, me too.
I thought it was a slam dunk. I thought they liked him a lot. I mean, Brady gave him the football quite a bit.
Yeah,
my guess is, though, honestly, now this could have been more of a Dorsey thing than a McDermott thing. I think a lot of us thought it was a McDermott thing, but if last year they went out and Damian Harris and Latavius Murray, man, they made sure they had themselves a big back.
Mm-hmm.
All right, they made sure that they had themselves a big back. They don't have that guy yet. Okay,
that's true.
So I would guess at a minimal salary that a big back's coming. Unless with all those 5s, okay, that's right in the sweet spot right
Does
there.
Ezekiel Elliott sound like a guy that could be a good football fit for what you think they're missing? I'm not a fan of his for what it's worth.
But I don't think they would bother with him. I think they could find that type of player, and someone that they that doesn't come with the hoopla. But that's a nice position that you could potentially fill if you love somebody in the middle rounds. All right, because that we've got them now, right? You know what I mean? We got a lot of what do we got? A lot of 5s.
Yeah,
like a bunch of 5s or something.
Yeah, got a couple 5s. Don't have a 3 right now. We thought we were going to get one with Jermaine Emmons comp, but it didn't play out. But yeah, they got extra 5s. I think they got an extra 6 too. I'm not sure, but they got a lot of day 3 picks. They're going to bring in more than 3 running backs because they want a couple bodies too for camp.
But I think an active
current
game day active running back is still yet to be signed.
So you think they're going to add a veteran still to this roster? I mean, it would be sensible. They did last year. They brought in Murray and Damian Harris with James Cook,
or maybe they draft a big back in the middle rounds. But look, they are unless it was all Dorsey and Brady gets his way, and say he uses Samuel out of the backfield a ton, so they don't have to dress that third halfback, that type shit. All right, unless it goes that way, okay. I can't imagine that there isn't a big back coming, and that big back is likely to have a jersey on game days.
Sure. 2 more here. Kirsten Rick 79180 says, I'm hoping for a big name safety in the draft. I'll handle this one real quick. There are none. Tyler Newman from Minnesota. He is the one potential, it seems, going by boards anyway, and mock drafters that are, you would respect out there. He's the only name I even see sometimes thrown around in the first round. I do think the Bills could draft a safety, maybe mid-round guy to a late-round guy and develop him behind hopefully a veteran that they sign. They got to sign a veteran free agent safety.
I agree, but it wouldn't shock me if there are some current second-round graded safeties.
There's a few
that McDermott falls in love with and just says, do it at 28.
Really? A safety in the first round you think is on the table legitimately? I'm not saying you're wrong. I mean, why wouldn't it be as things stand right now? That'll change if they sign a Simmons.
Of course, of course. If they do nothing,
right?
If they do nothing, it wouldn't shock me if I mean, look, man, because that's how he started this thing. He started this thing by grabbing an injured reserve safety from the Cleveland Browns and Jordan Poyer, and a fucking nickelback safety tweener from the Green Bay Packers and Micah. So he knows what he wants.
Especially at
he
that
knows
position.
what he wants at that position.
Yeah, he's his entire career, even before being a head coach of the Bills, he's always done good work with safeties. So that should be something that fans really aren't worried
this
about.
Roster. I mean, I know it's what drives the needle. It's what gets 1,000 people paying attention to this, and not me talking about James Wood spring training.
1,400, by the way.
Nice.
Props to everyone out there watching. Go ahead.
But bro, this fucking roster's fine. This roster is fine. It's gonna be fine. Everything is fine. They're probably going to be better on paper.
Ooh, really?
Yes.
I don't think that.
Okay.
Do you count Matt Milano being back as a new player?
Yeah.
Well, then, okay. Yes. I don't know though, man.
Yeah, I count a full year of Douglas. I count Milano coming back.
No, Douglas played half the year last year. You can't
count the weapons. I count the weapons that
Samuel.
I think are going to be at Josh's disposal. Yes, I think this team is going to be every bit as good on paper as last year's team.
Dude, I don't know. Mitch Morse, Poyer, Hyde, which again,
they weren't
back
playing
into their
Poyer,
careers.
Hyde. They weren't playing that level.
I'm not sure Taylor Rapp, 2024 Taylor Rapp is still better than 2024 Jordan Poyer. And they
probably not.
Cam Lewis is their safety right now. This is probably a question that we should be talking about post-draft. I think
it's gonna happen.
That's fair.
They know what their holes are. They're gonna fill them. All right. There's a safety coming. There's a defensive tackle coming. There's a defensive end coming. There's a wide receiver coming, and there's an interior offensive lineman coming. All who will have jerseys on game days. They ain't done by a long shot. You'll probably will have heard of more than half of the guys that I just mentioned that are going to fill those spots.
We've talked about almost every potential.
And I don't even like us, Deb. I don't even like the Bills, Deb. I'm just telling you what they're going to do. I'm not glass half full guy. I don't even give a shit.
Okay.
Not as much
listen, we've talked about
people.
All these positions. Nate Gehry today on Monday added a center as a potential first rounder. Don't completely write that off the board. There's a good one from Oregon.
There's a dope ass center, right? I mean, that's the one. That's the one thing. Like they could,
it could happen.
Let
me get to this last question here. It's from @filthyb79. A little bit of a neggy Nancy here response, but I think this is very fair. Have said all along, with Joe Burrow healthy, they are the clear-cut number 2 team in the AFC. Talking about the Bengals, of course, behind the Chiefs, and quite frankly, the only chance of stopping the three-peat this year. And no matter what some Bills fans think, we aren't touching them either in a game that matters in January. I mean, I don't like it, but you can't predict that the Bills are never going to beat the Chiefs. But I would say this. Do you think the Bengals, are the team most likely to stop at three-peat right now if Joe Burrow's healthy? I think the Bengals are the clear-cut second best team in AFC right now. You don't?
Why?
What have they killed the Bills the last 2 times they played them. You bet the house on them last year. What's changed about the Bengals? They've actually gotten better this offseason. They've signed a good safety. They've gotten help on the offensive line. They're a good football team. Listen, they might lose T. Higgins.
They're in a beast of a division. All right.
Sure.
And I get it. They went to a Super Bowl. That's big. They've they've gone on the road, all right, and won games in Kansas City and Buffalo. Those are huge, huge things. But at the end of the day, over the course of the 17-game season, I have yet to see the Bengals look as complete as the Buffalo Bills have for a sustained period of time. They found lightning in the bottle in a couple playoff games. Everybody loves Joe Burrow. All right. If it wasn't for the fact that it's Joe Burrow, if it was like, I don't know. Oh man. Kirk Cousins. All right, let's say it's Kirk Cousins. Let's say it's just a journeyman vet who's finally kind of banging. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's crazy to compare Cousins and Burrow. I don't think it's
Joe
crazy.
Burrow has owned the Bills all 3 times he's played them.
The whole body of work. All right. Joe Burrow is super cool, so that makes the Bengals super cool. I just don't think the Bengals are scary. I'm not scared of them. I'm not. I don't think there's any way.
Mike Vino, Joe Burrow going to make it for an entire season? That's a question with him, and it's fair too. He's been hurt multiple times.
Yeah, that matters.
In his career.
That matters too, guys. Sure. The whole Bills, Ravens, Bengals, whoever else you want to put in the conversation. Okay, none of it matters, man. None of it matters until September. You know, you want to sit there and try to rank how everybody slots right here in March. Knock yourselves out. All right. They're basically like 2A through 2E. Okay. That's it. And then there's the clear one that everybody's chasing.
Does Houston deserve to be on that list? You got Buffalo, you got Kansas City, Cincy, Buffalo, Baltimore. I think those are your first.
Yeah, they can go on. They can
go on the list. On that
yes,
tier?
They can go on the list. They can go on the 2A through 2E list. Sure.
Okay. 5-6
teams. Shit, there might be more teams that belong on that list. You could argue that maybe the Cleveland Browns belong on that list, although they're probably not there. The Jets, with the improvements they made on the offensive line, again, probably not in the same breath as those 5 teams in the hodgepodge behind the Chiefs, but they got better. What I don't, and this is something that we talked about in our limited.
You mean our 30-second pre-production meeting?
Nobody has attacked free agency, and come out with a team that I think is a much of a different threat to the Bills. Okay, either whether you think that they separated from the Bills in the case of the Bengals, or got closer to the Bills, maybe in the case of the Jets. No real move has been made in the AFC that, for me, moves the needle a great deal. You could argue that the greatest, story from free agency specifically related to the Bills, other than the Bills, who people might think, are tearing down or something, which isn't the case, is that the Dolphins lost pretty good guys. You know what I mean? And they were your closest competition. You had to go on a pretty improbable run, to beat them on the last day of the season. So the Jets may have got closer. The Dolphins seem to, lose some defensive personnel, and they're going to stick with Tua, it looks like.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know how, this has been a good offseason if you're the Bills.
It's weird to say that, though, because
of the cuts. They were such name guys.
It doesn't look. Samuel's been, well, not Samuel Hollins, and then they added a backup linebacker too. Those have been their only ads, and they've lost a lot of name players. That's why I find it interesting that you call it a good offseason. Not to say that that's wrong, because sometimes a football team gets better with addition by subtraction. And you could say Jordan Poyer at this point is just washed up. Mitch Morse, his best days were behind him with what they want to do offensively.
No, those aren't guys that I would call addition by subtraction. I don't think you're going to put a better, like right now, like you just said it. Taylor Rapp's not playing at a higher level than Jordan Poyer.
Right.
And I don't know that anybody that they get to fill the void on the offensive line is a better player than Mitch Morse.
I'm not ready to say this is a better offseason. Not until they improve the interior of the defensive line and get a safety. At least one of the two.
They're gonna.
Well, they haven't yet.
they're gonna. I mean, this offseason is a long way
it is
from over, and the holes aren't glaring.
I agree about that. And they signed a lot of guys last year after the draft. They signed Murray after the draft. They signed Floyd after the draft. They signed Poona Ford in the beginning of the summer, other players as well. So it is a long process. I do agree with that. All right, before we get out of here, man, and again, one more time, thank you to the nearly 1,500 people that have
It's up
watched
to
this live.
1.2 million viewers
Appreciate
right
you all.
now.
And I also would like to say, too, if you're watching us on the video side, pull out your phone if you can, man. Go to Apple or Spotify, find Talking Buffalo, and hit that follow button there as well. I'm going to give you the last take or the last word if you got anything Bills related. I really don't want to talk about the Sabres because they're playing a game that people are going to wake up on Tuesday and they're either going to be still in the playoff race or they're going to be almost buried. So I really don't want to go there, but you brought up Skinner earlier or something. I don't know where the hell you were going.
I talked about Thompson. Look, that's
Tage Thompson.
whatever. Yeah. That's my biggest fear is that the Sabres top line isn't here yet. I just that's my biggest fear. My biggest fear is that we overhyped Tage Thompson. Jeff Skinner was never a first line winger, and we're sitting here blaming guys like Zemgus Girgensons and Kyle Okposo when the real problem is the fact that that we don't have a first line, a dependable first line. That's my fear. I mean, it's not going to be answered this year either. It's next year is going to be a huge year for whether or not Tage is truly a first line center, whether or not Dylan Cousins is truly a second line center. If I had my druthers, all right, I'd slot Thompson as a second line center, Cousins as a third, and go use my money and trade for a first line center.
Last point, then I want to get out of here. But
that was boring.
With this run that the Sabres have been on, and
show.
Again, this might be up in smoke by the time you hear this on Tuesday, but do you think Granato saved his job with this recent playoff push? At least to this point, as we record this anyway, do you think he's gotten himself out of like the danger zone?
Yes, but I think it's fluid. I think I think that the remainder of the season is still.
They're up 3-1 in the first period, by the way.
That game started already?
Yep.
What the fuck time is it?
It's after 10, buddy.
Wow. I don't think. Well, I do think the rest of the season will matter as far as his job status is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he'll be fired simply for Adams to go on a true search for the next coach, like fired because it just wasn't going to work.
Right.
But I do think he could be replaced if and I'm just going to throw a name out there, someone the caliber of a Rob Brindamore became available, and Adams knew he could get him.
Okay.
And basically backdoored it, even though he would probably go on a coaching search. BS anyways.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. Again, thank you so much for watching and for listening. We appreciate you all, not so much Tone Fox. You don't appreciate me anyway. We're about to have a post-production meeting now where I got to teach you how to put together.
No. I'm going to open the laptop, put it on your dining room table, and then go outside and rip eaters and have a Coors Light. I ain't touching shit. That's for you to figure out.
All right, guys, I'll be back with a brand new show tomorrow. Thank you very much.